I remember as a child thinking about Mars in very simple terms. I imagined a future where we had already begun to change it, planting forests, vast, dark green evergreens stretching across a red landscape, quietly transforming it. Breathing in carbon dioxide, releasing oxygen, and over time, doing what life does best, reshaping a world into something familiar, something alive. It felt intuitive, almost inevitable. If life works here, why not there? But that assumption hides almost everything that matters. Mars isn't just a colder version of Earth, it's a fundamentally different environment. The atmospheric pressure at the surface is less than 1% of Earth's, about 0.6%. That's so low that liquid water can't remain stable. It either freezes or boils away. The air is almost entirely carbon dioxide, with only trace amounts of oxygen. And without a global magnetic field, the surface is exposed to constant radiation from space. If you were to stand on Mars without protection, you wouldn't slowly suffocate. You would lose consciousness in about 15 seconds. Not because Mars is dramatic, but because it's indifferent. So the natural question is, why not change it? Why not terraform Mars? Thicken the atmosphere, warm the planet. Let biology do the rest. Even if you released every accessible source of carbon dioxide on Mars, every polar reserve, every trace in the soil, you would still end up with only a tiny fraction of Earth's atmospheric pressure. Not 10%, not even 5%, closer to 1%. And even if you built that atmosphere, Mars would struggle to keep it. Mars lost its global magnetic field billions of years ago. Without it, the solar wind slowly strips atmospheric particles into space. Not in moments, but over time, inevitably. And there's a quieter realization that follows. Those forests I imagined as a child, they wouldn't survive there. Trees evolved for one atmosphere, for liquid water, for a stable climate. Mars offers almost none of those things. You can't plant a forest into a vacuum and expect it to adapt. You have to build the conditions first. One of the more compelling ideas is something called paraterraforming. Instead of transforming the entire planet, you create controlled environments within it. Mars offers something that makes this more plausible than it sounds. Its surface is carved with enormous canyon systems, far larger than anything on Earth. One of them, Valles Marineris, stretches for around 4,000 kilometers and plunges up to 7 kilometers deep. Now imagine taking one of these canyons and enclosing it, not with a rigid dome, but with a vast membrane stretched across the top, anchored deep into the surrounding rock, flexible, layered, and continuously maintained. Seal the boundaries, introduce air, stabilize temperature, pressurized to something closer to high-altitude conditions on Earth. Inside, the experience would be familiar, but not identical. But none of this sustains itself, because the real challenge isn't just building the environment, it's maintaining it. The pressure difference between the inside and the outside is immense. The air inside is always trying to escape, through seams, through microscopic fractures, even slowly through the ground itself. The structure must flex with temperature changes, absorb stress, and remain intact over enormous scales. And above all, it must be monitored, continuously. Because this isn't architecture, it's life support. And any ecosystem introduced would have to adapt. At first, the ecosystem would be simple, carefully designed. Then, gradually, it would become more complex. Not a copy of Earth, but something quieter, more deliberate, and distinctly Martian. And there's an even stranger possibility. It may be easier to live above Mars than on it. In orbit, many of these problems disappear. You're not fighting a planet, you're building an environment from scratch. Large rotating habitats could simulate gravity. Conditions could be tightly controlled. Radiation shielding could be built into the structure itself. In that model, Mars becomes something else. Not primarily a place to live, but part of a wider system. And yet, Mars carries something Earth no longer does: a record of its past. Billions of years ago, Mars was very different. There is strong evidence that liquid water once flowed across its surface, forming rivers, lakes, and perhaps even shallow seas. And where you have liquid water, energy, and the right chemistry, on Earth at least, life tends to emerge. We don't yet know if it ever did on Mars, but it's a serious question, and an open one. We may never walk freely beneath an open Martian sky, but that doesn't mean Mars is beyond our reach. And perhaps, one day, those forests I imagined as a child will exist. Not in open Martian soil, but under a sky we built ourselves. Something not quite Earth, not quite Mars, but something in between. Thanks for watching. Until next time.